I've noticed that.
I think it's a general rule. If someone reaches out to you on LinkedIn, they say, let's go to WhatsApp and Telegram. That's, to me, it's a red flag. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, there's a lot more there, and I still advise on some things with blockchain and crypto. So I would say I'm still getting a lot more of that from that world than I have from what I do with Barklow and Deep Tech.
Okay. So the University of Washington is it's a pretty good product design school, pretty good computer science business. Is there a college out there that's going to be known as a good quantum college?
I think a lot of folks are still in the hunt, and what you decide as a good quantum college means different things to different people. For some people, it's like, did we get the computer and did we publish and did we, there's definitely the more academic success metrics. And that's one thing I try to point out to people about when the next wave of innovation is going to come from researchers and harder science, those folks' incentives are different than us business people and different than the Stanford computer science grad, right? Because they want to work for CERN. They want to work with the particle accelerator. They want to be published in peer review. They want tenure. They want grants and funding for their labs work to continue. They want a Nobel, right? Those incentives are very different in terms of the source of the IP that can come into products and goods, services, companies. And so bearing that in mind, that's where this academic piece becomes really, really important to the ecosystem. But once again, we might have a metric that says we would love to see founders or a volume of commercialized IP, but their goal might be we want to be able to boost the department, or we want to be able to drive enough revenue, investments, grants, etc., to get a new lab or a new clean room or to afford another electron spectrometer, right? You don't spectrometer. There's the academic goals and the commercial goals around this space. That's one thing that I've been talking to some folks about. How do you navigate that?
So, how to ask this question? So, in order to do quantum, all this kind of stuff, I assume you have to be kind of smart, kind of challenger, right? But can someone the average intelligence being in quantum and being physics and being all this kind of stuff, or do you have to have some kind of super intelligence?
You mean as an end user or as what part?
As actually putting it together.
Well, it depends. So for example, think about laboratories, right? So there were folks who are absolute geniuses working on CRISPR and genetic editing and sequencing the human genome. Then there was a bunch of lab technicians that were working in the clean room that were handling the samples. You have to have a baseline of intelligence to handle the samples and follow the lab instructions, but did you need to be the CRISPR people who sequence the human genome? No.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of like that within the supply chain, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah. And so the vertical course is going to have 3 to 5 companies. Is the plan to keep it at 3 to 5 forever, or are you going to kind of ramp it up after you validate the model?
Yeah, I think the goal is to ramp it up. The goal is to be able to have a playbook to use at other venture studios. The goal is to be able to have other venture studios in other places. And the goal is to really, like I said, normalize innovation in these areas here, in our region and in the U.S. more broadly. Not for nothing, a lot of those 9 states who have a quantum initiative, that's because some of them got federal funding, they're getting state funding. And, there's kind of a bit of a federal and state budget crunch where, I've had people express very real concern to me that Washington State and our region has maybe missed the gravy train, so to speak, on that funding. But that said, our model, proving it out, testing it out, making adjustments, we want to be way makers and way showers to have monetized innovation and traction engines where, it's really a function of the problems that we're solving with these technologies and these companies that are driving things forward, and not whether or not the right people are in office to write you checks.
Yeah. So we talk some about government contracts, SAM.gov. Are y'all going to do anything with SBI contracts or anything like that?
Well, it really depends. I think one thing that's been really interesting to me is how even just our venture studio model, it is because it's different and it's a bit novel, it doesn't quite check the boxes. So I'll give you an example. I've had people approach me as a woman co-founder, woman of color, et cetera, for Barklow to apply to these different funds. But the thing is that I run a venture studio, and don't get me wrong, there are venture studios who are acquired by accelerators or incubators or funds. There are venture studios who have a separate value. They have a separate valuation framework, all of that, right? But the funding sort of programs that I would be eligible for as a female founder, there's no room for a venture studio model. Because as a venture studio, I will not have a product of my own. See what I'm saying? I will not have a book of business. I will be on multiple cap tables. I will have an operating budget for a studio, and then I will have an advisory that kind of like EY and Deloitte and all that. I will own a portion of the practice, and then we will have revenue. Like so I'm saying like the model is just so different that it's like if I were to have a consulting firm, let's say I was just going with the advisory studio side of it, I wouldn't be eligible for that startup funding. Yeah. I wouldn't even be considered a tech company.
Yeah. Is there a startup in quantum that you're like, man, I can't wait for someone to do this?
Oh man, that one's tough. You know, there's so many things that kind of need that next gen kind of security treatment and quantum readiness and like Q-day readiness that it's hard to pick one. I'm going to talk more generally at with the tech stack like we were talking about earlier. I'm really excited for when we start getting to the app studio part. I'm really excited when we start getting to like the hybrid solution, quantum and AI, allowing simulations from like actual data to allow people to make quality like apps, like low code, no code, but backed by this really powerful, tested, secure data in a way that can be like customizable and extensible and all of that in this like really secure way. I'm really excited when we get to that because, I mean, even like with Microsoft Copilot, they don't have an app studio. You know, I'm just noticing across like a lot of emerging tech because like we're still figuring out like some of the back end, the model, the outputs, the quality, the data centers. We haven't got to the app part. I mean, even like the GPT moment is great, but like the part where people can make, you know, you can make your own kind of like agents. But like, I know there's some folks working on some cool stuff with digital twins, but I still think that this is even separate from that. I'm talking about like the simplicity of a like, hey, I want to make this sort of, here's an example. I'm an Android girly, and I have friends on iPhone, and there's all kinds of things in the Play Store, right, that I can use, and they're like, oh, that's not in the iOS store. You know, there have been many technologies that have promised that someday people can have something like that on their own. I would love to see us using some of the stuff like around quantum and all that, particularly the simulation side, to get us to where we can do that.
So let's talk about how you do your personal schedule, right? Are you the type of person who like work 100 hours a week? You work only 9 to 5, take weekends off, like, or it just depends week per week?
It depends week per week. I am a dynamic planner. I definitely have to be a dynamic planner.
And then like, how do you do this, right? Let's say you have 100 things on your list, right? How do you make sure on Monday morning you do things, excuse me, 1, 2, and 3 versus 96 and 97?
Well, typically the 1, 2, and 3 on the list are the things that like, how do I put this? Like, my to-do list kind of have like these dynamics around them where it's like if it's not done like if I don't get this done, how am I going to show up to the podcast episode? If I don't get these steps done, how are we going to have an event next week, right? So like it's very there's kind of like a tactical element to it and kind of like an order of operations to a lot of what needs to get done. Because we're operators, you know, so there's a lot of that from just like my good old fashioned program management days that really drive a lot.
Now, how you deal with this? This is a problem I struggled with in the past. Like, so I'm assuming you have a high level of excellence, like you have a high standard of doing stuff, right? How do you deal with like when people around you don't have the same standard, right? Do you like you just get frustrated? You try to bring up to your level? Like, how do you deal with people who don't have the high standards that you do?
You know, that is a very interesting question. I'm not sure, and I think it's because we've just been like 6 months in the venture studio. I'm not really sure I've run into that problem so much here.
Maybe not here, but maybe in the past or whatever.
It's a really good question. That's pretty awesome that'd be the case now. I would say before. It really depends on like how much dependency I have on their output of like what they're doing, right? Because there are some things that I think some people I call it Yelp reviewing. Like it's like it doesn't meet their standard, but it actually doesn't like have anything to do with you. If that's how they like put themselves out there and like, you know, done is better than perfect. I've noticed within startups there tends to be this tension, like you said, around like this excellence in how you show up and people being like, just ship it. Just ship it, just ship it, just ship it, right? And I noticed that just ship it people only mean that to a point. What I tend to find is like it's very important to actually like set expectations around like what people come with, if that's what you're looking for. There's that saying that unexpressed expectation is a premeditated resentment, that kind of thing. Yeah, we tell people like, oh, just do whatever, and then they do the whatever, and we're like, I think that's kind of a missed opportunity to like level set on expectations. At least in my past, that's what I would have told my younger self.